All righty. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Going to let some of you guys filter in. We're excited to have you guys all here with us. All right. Well, we're going to let folks keep filtering in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started just with my brief spiel that we have. For those of you that have joined us for a webinar before, you might know me. My name is Sammy Focarino. I'm the Senior Events Manager here at Consensus, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. This webinar is presented by Consensus. Consensus is intelligent demo automation software that helps scale pre-sales with interactive video demos. You can learn more at goconsensus.com. We have had a great time this year at all of our DemoFest events. We had DemoFest virtual in May. Art spoke at that event. And then we had West Coast, Dublin, and London. We just got back from our London event and it was absolutely amazing. If you joined us there, you know that room was just absolutely electric. So we're really, really excited to be gearing up for our very last DemoFest X event of the year in East Coast. It's going to be in New York City on November 9th. Art is actually going to be speaking at that event as well. So if you just love this session, which I know you all will, you definitely should register to join us there as well. You can register at demofest.com and I'll post that link in the chat as well. We encourage you to participate in today's webinar. Art is going to answer questions at the close of the session, but you're welcome to post them at any time through the Q&A box. We also really encourage you to participate through the chat function as well. So just make sure that if you're asking questions, you do so through the Q&A box. When Art asks you guys to participate in the session, you're doing that through the chat box. I don't want any of your questions to get lost. I want to make sure we answer all of those questions for you guys. So just make sure you're doing those in the separate places. If at any time you're having technical difficulties, go ahead and press the help button on the right side of your screen, or you can chat me in the chat function and I can try and help you with that. A recording of this session will be uploaded and sent to you guys at the close of the event, and Art has also offered the slides to you guys. So we'll give you guys a QR code to download those slides at the end as well. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Art is a sales transformation consultant with a wealth of consultative sales training and development expertise based on 20 plus years as a customer and in pre-sales, sales, and sales management roles. Art began in engineering and quickly moved into the software space, running internal software applications at Fortune 500 companies. This led to sales engineering, account manager, and sales management positions with leading enterprise software companies where he routinely surpassed revenue and performance targets. Art moved into an internal sales enablement role in 2000, then drove U.S. business for a global learning provider, and eventually founded his own company in 2009, Team Sales Development, focused on helping SEs and AMs improve results, seamless sales. And with that, I am going to turn the rest of the time over to you, Art.
Thank you very much, Sammy, and welcome to everybody. Thanks, Sammy, for the help and Consensus for sponsoring this. I'm looking forward to today's session, whether you're live or whether you're watching the recording, and also being in New York City, which will be a little bit different flavor than this, but building on a lot of these concepts. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And while I'm getting started here, if you don't mind, if everybody could just put in the chat real quick your job function and where you are calling in from today, that would be very helpful. Also, that way you'll have the chat function handy to be able to participate in today's session, because I'm going to be using that from time to time. So feel free to go ahead and put the information in the chat there as we're beginning. All right, so what is this all about? Well, as we get started, really, we know that sales is a team sport. We've heard it over and over again. And there is a lot of focus on working as a team. And sometimes that means the team of pre-sales, the team of sales, and management's focused on that. Sometimes we hear things like, tips and tricks about the way that we can work together with our account manager or as a salesperson, how we work together with pre-sales. And those are all really good. What I really want to do today, though, is take a much deeper dive on this in terms of the way specifically a pre-sales resource and a sales resource work together for account and opportunity management. So this is very much at the execution level, not just high level ideas, which are all really good, by the way, but we can add on to those. When you get this, when you get the recording, when you get the handout, I encourage you to work with your sales team, or if you're a salesperson, work with your pre-sales counterparts and work with your management and your enablement teams, because this is really for everybody. While this is part of the scaling pre-sales series, it is about elevating pre-sales, but it's for the benefit of the entire team. And by the way, this is also going to be a deeper topic of the book that I'm in the process of writing called Making Seamless Sales, and that should be available sometime in spring of 2024. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn so that you can be part of that journey as well. And I see many, many people here. Thanks. I love some of the comments in here as well. And you can all see Sammy has the comments enabled for those of you that are live, so you can see what each other are saying. And at the end of this, you'll be able to see the results. All right. So what is the reason, why are you taking an hour of your time to invest in this? In Great Demo, of which I'm a certified partner, we focus a lot on critical business issues, which means what is it that we really care about? So for each of the audiences that are here, and I see in the chat, there's audiences representing all these different groups. For pre-sales, one of the main critical business issues that this will help you with is to move the deal forward. While we're not necessarily responsible as a pre-sales person to close the deal, the goal is to move the deal forward and increase the probability of the win for the salesperson. For sales, in those roles, when we're doing that, it's really all about winning more deals and having more satisfied customers and repeat customers, especially now with SaaS and with the idea of consumption being what drives the annual recurring revenue. For sales teams and enablement, I know that what your CBI is, and again, I've been in all these roles, including being a customer and being on the receiving end of plenty of demos back at the beginning of my career when I was implementing enterprise systems. In sales enablement, if that's you, or sales management, what this can help you with is really to drive the effectiveness and the efficiency of the sales teams so that they can win more. So really, this is for everybody. And collectively, the goal is client satisfaction beyond the sale, even beyond just the signing up, but the actual use of our solutions. As I do with all my sessions, and any of you that have been with me before, I like you to write down some key takeaways for your own sake. And then at the end of this, we'll share those in the chat so that you can let each other know how this has helped you, and also take away things that you can act on following the session. So those are our goals. And with that in mind, it turns out, and this is from the Consensus 2023 SE Compensation Survey, which I encourage all of you to grab a copy of. And if you have when you get the slides, there'll be a link at the bottom of the slide that you should be able to use. You can also find it on the Consensus website if you don't have it. One of the insights that I gleaned out of this was this slide, which is on page 52 in the report. And that is that annual recurring revenue is the most popular quota metric for pre-sales. Now, this is all about pre-sales, but I'll get to why this is important for all of us in a second. Irrespective of the position and quota type, and this I found fascinating, 74% of team quotas for pre-sales individual contributors and leaders were measured exclusively by ARR or contained some component of it. So while we might think, pre-sales is a support function, it is. Sales is a customer of pre-sales internally, they are. We are all in this together, and really the focus of all of this is how we can generate more ARR. But first and foremost comes successful customers. And before that comes how we work together as a sales team. So that's what the idea is behind this session and what's in it for all of you. We're all working for that one goal, client satisfaction. Now, some of the issues that we've heard from others like you, and I just want you to kind of mentally see how this compares with your situation, are things like for sales, for pre-sales, I should say, Uh, Often there's complaints that they don't get the correct discovery information or enough information to do what they need. There's a lot of things at the last minute or little or no time to prepare. Sales and in sales functions, some of you may have experienced this, is that, you know what, the prospect wants a demo, so just show them a demo. I know they're going to love it. And as a salesperson, I know that I love showing our stuff because our SE is just going to do a great job. At the same time, some of the issues are, I need to be careful if I'm a salesperson because the SEs could say too much or could tell the truth, which might be perceived as damaging to the client. And then for the client, some of their issues that they've said, what we heard from them is things like, well, a lot of times sales teams feel very pushy and it feels like they're just delivering a harbor tour, and I get confused and I don't feel like they were helpful and things like that. So just mentally, you can just see what you relate to here and ask yourself, how does this compare with your situation? Are you feeling some of these things too? So clearly there's a lot of room for improvement, which is not saying that it's always or completely true, but these are some of the things that we're going to work on today. All right, so we're going to look at the challenges. We're going to look at the impact of those challenges. We're going to look at some proposed solutions for success, and then we're going to be doing a wrap up. And I see some of you are still joining, which welcome. And please put in there, as you notice in the chat, where you're from and what your job title is. That'll be helpful as we go through here. So we'll look at more information. A lot more will follow in the book that I'm writing about this, but I just want to give you a little bit today on highlights of what we're going to be covering. If we're supposed to be working in the client's best interest and making the engagement as smooth as possible, and our goal is to help them buy, which everybody pretty much knows. And by the way, Garen Hess, the CEO of Consensus, wrote a phenomenal book, Selling is Hard and Buying is Harder. So we know, and we intuitively are starting to realize that the focus has to be on the buyer. And there's been a good shift in that direction. But that isn't enough, because really there's a lot conspiring against sales and pre-sales that keeps us from executing on this goal, and even executing on the goal of not just helping them buy, but helping them to consume. So because I've been in all of these roles, including a customer, I want to share with you some things that I've observed and that I feel like are very relevant right now to what's going on. So challenge number one is that pre-sales is perceived as providing twice as much value during the sales engagement as their sales counterparts. And just to prove that out, John Kerr had made mention of this in the LinkedIn post yesterday, that yes, this is a chart from John Kerr's Making Technical Sales, Mastering Technical Sales book. And this is a chart of results from a survey that he took of middle management, individual and IT, and also CXO stakeholders. So what you're looking at is different people in the client organization, our customers, and what they thought about different types of assets or resources that you would be providing to them. So general collateral, including like the website, the salesperson, the technical team, which includes pre-sales, of course, and then the executives. And notice it jumps out very clearly here that over and over again, for all different levels in the organization, they feel like the technical team, primarily pre-sales, is often twice as valuable as some of the other resources, including the salesperson. And in some cases, it's quite dramatically more appreciated. So you've all probably heard the quote before that people would love to work with solution providers like you if only they could not have to talk to sales. And I think that what that means is they'd like to just skip the sales part and go right to the pre-sales part and get what they need in terms of the information and the support. However, we need to work together as a team, and clearly the salesperson has a very important part in closing the deal. So while this might look a little bit ominous, the fact is that the fact that clients don't trust sales as much as pre-sales could look like a bad thing, but actually I think there's a hidden advantage here. SEs can be a secret weapon for sales. Pre-sales can be the secret weapon for sales. Pre-sales comes with trust. Sales doesn't. Pre-sales has trust to lose. Sales has trust to gain. Working together better as a team, we can then build on the SE's credibility and help the salesperson's credibility by showing that we are clearly finding out what it is the client wants. So one of the things for all of you who are in sales to consider is, and sales management, pre-sales is kind of like the bartender, I like to say. Our clients will tell us just about anything. And as such, we can ask, pre-sales can ask questions that maybe sales couldn't even ask. So the thing about this is that SEs have trust, sales needs to build it. Let's work together to figure out how we can make that happen. So that's the first challenge. We'll talk about solutions for how to make this better in a few minutes. The second challenge is, unfortunately, and I know this sounds harsh, unfortunately, sales doesn't inherently trust pre-sales. And notice I've underlined the word inherently. The idea here is that sales is doing what they need and engaging pre-sales, and they should be utilizing pre-sales fully. But sometimes either sales doesn't inherently trust pre-sales, or pre-sales has not allowed the salesperson to trust them. So experience shows that there's plenty of room for improvement. For example, sometimes sales is explicitly using the SE just as a demo resource, or for, things that, maybe they don't involve them as much as they should. And if you're in sales, maybe you can think about this and how you use your pre-sales resource. Sometimes there's a lack of communication, and we saw it in the, what are some of the challenges? There's a lack of communication in sharing things like discovery information from sales to pre-sales, or even getting pre-sales involved with discovery. But I think, again, sometimes sales is thinking, well, pre-sales might say the wrong thing. Now, to this point, and I'll refer to the consensus survey here, and you can look it up yourself, too much time, it was found out, is spent on demos, which are actually ranked 10th in terms of impact. So the survey asked, what in pre-sales are you spending your time on? Largely guided and directed by the salesperson. And most of the time, in fact, it was answer number 2, it's spending time on introductory demos. But when it came to impact, that was actually ranked 10th in terms of impact. So clearly there's something going on there in terms of why so many introductory demos. Secondly, POCs in the same survey were ranked as number 3 as what is time is most spent on, ranked as number 3. But in terms of the importance or impact, it was ranked as number 7. So once again, we'd have to say, where are all these POCs coming from, and why is there such an emphasis on it? Now, it could be sales is asking for this from pre-sales. It could be as pre-sales, we may be driving that more or pushing in that direction because it's something that you feel comfortable with. So it really is a two-way street. In fact, I found this excerpt from an article that Karthik had written on LinkedIn, and I found this very insightful. A sales professional will be inclusive if there's a deep sense of trust with the pre-sales professional. However, early engagement of pre-sales team in the sales cycle is rare. Initially, this could be interpreted as the sales professional is not trusting pre-sales, and therefore they don't get them involved early in the sales cycle. And I think there's something to be said about that. I know that in many organizations that I work with to deliver workshops for John Care or for Great Demo or my workshops, if it's a pre-sales audience, very early on, and it's kind of always interesting to see how soon it's mentioned, but in this workshop for pre-sales folks, the issue comes up, my salesperson needs this. They're not doing things that they should be doing. So that's how this could be interpreted. At the same time, I think this could be interpreted, and this is where pre-sales also shares responsibility, is as pre-sales and as a pre-sales profession, what is being done to show your value to sales? There's an old sales adage that says we will be relegated down to the level of questions we ask. And I feel like the same thing is true about we will be relegated down to the level of behavior that we exhibit. And if pre-sales is doing mainly technical things or being seen as mainly technical, then pre-sales will be utilized in a technical way. So this really is a two-way street, that pre-sales also can be upscaled and show sales the value that is brought. Clearly, as we could see from here, clients see the value in pre-sales. And I just find it really ironic, and some of you are probably feeling this, is that sales doesn't always feel that same level of value. So what is pre-sales doing to help that out? I'm really glad that a number of organizations are being proactive, and I see this a lot in sales teams. It's usually very often the pre-sales team that's being proactive to get training to upscale on things like business outcomes and how to do proper demos and how to do proper discovery. And that's wonderful. And so as pre-sales, you're equipped to do more of that. Sales can learn from that. And so we need to help them to understand that. So pre-sales can have a bigger impact with the customer, but we all need to work together to make it so. And for all the sales colleagues on this call or listening to this recording, I encourage you to explore the way that pre-sales can help you out if you're not doing that already, because it's not an absolute. The best sales professionals know the value and respect the value of the SE and see them as a key team member. So that's the second challenge. The third challenge is that sales methods in general and sales management and even sales enablement are very often aligned with either sales or pre-sales. I know that, I work with a lot of different sales organizations and with sales providers. I have partnerships with a variety of different people, including Peter for Great Demo and John for Mastering Technical Sales. And on the sales side, I work with Steve Bistritz. So what's interesting is, as I have discussions with different people, they're like, yeah, I just as soon focus on one or the other. Many of the sales providers are just focused on sales and sales things or pre-sales things. So there's a lot of opportunity here for sales management and enablement to bridge that gap and help us see the value. What I do a lot of is help sales understand what pre-sales is being taught and vice versa. And even in things like Great Demo, we have combined audiences all the time because it applies to everybody. Certainly with doing discovery, it applies to everybody. Now, in some organizations, sales management is pre-sales and sales. I know EMEA and other places, pre-sales sometimes rolls up into sales management, which does allow for better potential collaboration, but I still don't see it happening organically. I think it's something that we really need to foster and we need to support. So this is kind of conspiring against us as well. So pre-sales, sales, aided by sales management, sales enablement, all needing to work together. So it starts with all of us. So those are some of the challenges or the background, the backdrop of what we have. And I'll be glad to answer questions on this shortly here as we wrap up, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn to share your experiences in that area. Let's take a look at some of the impact then of what this means, what the implications are. And you've probably already started to think about this, and I'd like you to, I'm going to put this in the chat here. Right now, based on what we've covered so far, what are some of the implications that you've either personally experienced, or what are some things that you can imagine based on this that might be an issue resulting from these three things that are at play? So go ahead and put in the chat. What are your thoughts on what type of negative impact have you experienced, or could you imagine resulting from these challenges? and everybody can just go ahead and send it to everyone if you are so allowed. It should be, that should be enabled, but I'll read some of these out if it comes in. So you appear disjointed to the buyer, not united, causes a lot of friction in the sales process, slows things down. Pre-sales teams goes underutilized. Yep, and make sure everybody you're sending it to the all or everyone creates an us versus them environment, the opposite of teaming. Exactly. Sales and pre-sales don't have a cohesive approach. Yep. Insufficient alignment due to misunderstandings. Pre-sales used for a demo, perception of left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing, brought in late in the process. Right. These are all things that are fixable. These are things that are in our circle of control. What I think has happened is we've just been traditionally, and it has evolved as two separate organizations that don't automatically talk to each other. And we can have a whole nother webinar on what the personality styles and everything else are. But the point is, and go ahead and continue to put these in the chat. These are extremely helpful. These are the things that we can work on fixing. These are the things that we can work on together that will allow better results for everybody. So, internal conflict, frustration, loss of sales, do nothing, inefficient use of resources, wasting our time, wasting the client's time, wasting each other's time, a technical win, but not business close, and longer sales cycles. And ultimately, we wind up with not running through deals that are going to close, or we don't get the recurring revenue that we expect because they're not using it the way they should. So in summary, what I have found is that pre-sales resources are underutilized or improperly utilized probably 3/4 of the time. And this is from empirical data. This is from anecdotal data that, comes in as I'm doing my workshops. You've seen it on LinkedIn, and look it in the chat right now. We can see the potential results. And that's too bad, because it leads to frustration for the client. It leads to frustration for sales and pre-sales. And because of that, client satisfaction suffers and sales results suffer. And as I mentioned before, the consensus study is very, very insightful in this area. So 30% of demos the study found are unqualified. And 26% of all the respondents to the survey said that 50% of the demos are unqualified. That's a lot of guessing going on. That's not us setting each other up for success. And again, let's share the responsibility here. Sales can do better qualification, but as pre-sales, better asking and better involvement and better partnering can happen. That's in our circle of control. Furthermore, the consensus study shows that the ICs, the individual contributors who were confronted with unqualified demos, which is near to the vast majority, at least half for sure, said that they have less influence and recognition relative to sales, and this leads to dissatisfaction, burnout, and churn in the pre-sales organization, which nobody wants to see. What I find interesting about that is it that they are getting unqualified demos that causes less influence or recognition, or is it less influence and recognition that's causing more unqualified demos? So the idea here is, let's work together to understand qualification, understand the discovery information that comes out of it, and so that we can focus on that outcome of client satisfaction. So that's why I've dubbed this the last frontier of sales improvement, because it's sitting there right in front of us, and all of us have the ability to do something about it. We've already shared a few ideas on that, and certainly identified the things that we can change and that we can have some impact on. So let's take a look at some of the proposed solutions for success. Now, I will just say this is just a short list, and this is just a suggested list. This is to get you started. I could in no way list everything here, but based on some of the essences that come out of what we've discussed so far, here are some ideas. So feel free to expand on your own or put your ideas into the chat. And if you have specific questions, make sure you put it in the Q&A, because Sammy's taking a look at that so we can have a discussion here as we wrap up. And by the way, continue to write down your key takeaways, whether you're in sales, sales management, sales enablement, or in pre-sales. All right, so here's some advice. And again, this is friendly advice. And by the way, I am an account manager right now. I have my own company. I sell. I want my clients to buy. I want client success, right? My goal is not just to share this information and help everybody out, but to provide the opportunity for people to improve. So I constantly am giving myself this advice as well. I'm also pre-sales and I've been a customer. So I understand what it's all about as well as sales enablement. So here's some advice for all of us collectively. One is, just improving the relationship with the SE. So improve the way we're working together and make sure that we're working together appropriately. Probably the SE should be involved sooner than you think, but be careful about that because the key word here is appropriately. We don't want to involve the SE in unqualified opportunities. So is it qualified enough to involve a SE or pre-sales? And then what is the way we can work together on collectively doing things like discovery and things like that? So provide that qualification and discovery information, whether it's done together or if it's in the CRM. Now, I know as a salesperson, we all maybe hate is probably a strong word. It's getting better and better, but often CRM is a necessary evil, and you got to kind of put your stuff in there to get the check mark from your sales management so that you can get paid or whatever. But I would encourage everybody to treat it very seriously. The CRM system is not there for its existence. It should be there to help you sell. And therefore, putting the right information in there is important. I just had a client recently who, and many clients, are upscaling in modern sales methodologies, even have stuff in their CRM system specific to it. And yet the complaint over and over again when someone goes to use the information is it's incomplete, it's not sufficient, it's too vague, it isn't helpful. So if sales is doing the right job, the right information is going to be found out. And from hello, let's document all that information so that that is available for everybody downstream. Talk about and focus together on the value desired. So as the salesperson, you are responsible for the business decision maker and driving the business decision forward. What is the value the client's going to get out of it? Make sure that we are providing that information and focusing on that, and also the opportunity strategy. And then other things beyond the solution. So what we find often is sales may have an idea of, hey, like I said at the beginning of this, they want to see a demo. I know they'll love the stuff. Art, put together your A team and show them the stuff, right? Well, that's not the way that people buy. They need to understand what's going on. And by the way, coming up with the solution is probably the easiest part. There's other things that sales knows that should be shared, such as making sure that the competitive landscape is understood. As a salesperson, what is the decision process and who are the key decision makers? Who are the stakeholders? And that's when we get into the critical business issues. It's not a corporate level. There may be a business need, but individually, each person that we are working with has their own critical business issue that we're trying to address. And that's very important for sales to understand that. And of course, in sales, one of our biggest competitors is do nothing or no decision. So the idea here is, what are we doing in sales to make sure that these are identified and that we have a plan to address these? And then, of course, encourage your SE to help you expand discovery and the implications. Don't be afraid to get the SE involved in the process, because as I said earlier, they're like the bartender, so they can find things out that the account manager can't find out. And I have, at one point in my career, I did a role that was all the way from the initial contact all the way through implementation, but I wasn't doing the sales role, and my customers trusted me implicitly. But when I became a salesperson on that same account, they started to not trust me so much. So this is a huge advantage for sales, is to partner with your SE and work together to get that additional information and provide insights. And then one of the things is to make sure that you plan the questions so that you know the questions you want to ask as a salesperson, and you know the questions that the SE can help you with. And it's not strictly business and technical. There should be a healthy overlap, because the goal is to connect those two together. So in the chat, and I'll just put a little demarcation point here. In this, oh, hold on a second. So in the chat, I've just put a spot there where you all can provide additional advice. If you're in sales, what's the advice you give yourself? If you're a SE or pre-sales or management or enablement, what advice would you give for sales? So feel free to add in the chat there any other ideas that you have, and you can all see those and copy those out. All right, what about for pre-sales then? As a pre-sales professional, some advice is use a help me help you approach to sort of sell the salesperson on what you can provide. As we said, sales doesn't inherently trust pre-sales, but let's turn the mirror on ourselves if we're pre-sales and say, what can we do to help lower that barrier? What can we do to help build the trust? And what can we do to help show our usefulness? So show the asset that you can be. Many of you have been trained through the methodologies that I've mentioned, specifically mastering technical sales and great demo. A lot of it from me, I would hope. A lot of you that are listening to this, I probably facilitated those sessions for you. Use that training and that experience. Your management invested in you so that you could be a better asset and you could be prepared for what the salesperson is asking of you. And then don't be afraid to ask for the discovery information. As I said before, we will be relegated down to the level at which we ask, and that includes internally. So if all we're asking for is what product do they want to see or what capabilities do they want to see, then we're going to be treated as a demo resource. In pre-sales, if you ask more discovery information, such as what we cover, for example, what are the needs? What are the issues? What's keeping them from achieving their goals? What are the capabilities they want? And that doesn't necessarily mean features and functions. What business capabilities does the prospect want? So ask your salesperson about that and find out from them what they know, because they might know it and they might not have told you. But when you ask them, that compels all of us as a team to go find that out. When we are talking internally or with our customers, the advice for pre-sales is speak the language of business, as in not just technical speak. Whenever we are showing a solution, whenever a demo is given, it shouldn't just be about the solution. And anybody that's been through Mastering Technical Sales with John Kerr knows FAB, which is not just the feature and not even the advantages. So not just what it is or what it does, but why would somebody care about it? What's the value? What's the benefit? So feature, advantage, benefit, FAB. What's the benefit of that for them? The feature and the advantage is more about us, isn't it? It's about our stuff. That's the technical solution. Why would somebody care? That's where we can get into the business value and the outcomes. And then all of you, even if you're relatively new, you've had many experiences that you can relate to when it comes to your personal experience, your experience with a vertical, with a certain domain, with certain personas. Perhaps some of you came from a customer environment, so you can empathize with your clients about what they're going through. That's something that you should be willing to share and use to your advantage and collectively for the sales team's advantage. And then a big part of this, and this is another workshop that I do for SEs called Technical Opportunity Planning, is all about finding and managing risk to the deal. Now, what do I mean by risk to the deal? The salesperson has an idea of what qualification looks like, what the deal looks like. As a pre-sales person, you will have a unique perspective, especially since people are telling you things that they wouldn't tell anybody else. you have a unique perspective to double check. And that's probably a harsh word because we're not checking on anybody, but we're confirming, we are collaborating, we're triangulating on the information to be able to find out, is there any risk here? Are we aligned with the stakeholders? Have we identified all the things that could get in the way? What is the possibility of do nothing? And what can we do to overcome that? So that's really a big responsibility for pre-sales. And that's something the salesperson wants to see, is where am I not seeing what's going on? Because the customer, the client, could very well be hiding things or not being forthcoming with sales because inherently they don't trust sales. And then, of course, again, beyond the solution, focusing on influencing key decision makers. Sales is all about influence. And as pre-sales, the job is to move the deal forward, which means influencing the behavior, the way that people see things. Find out who the key decision makers are, and then address their critical issues. How will they realize value? What will they see as a result of what you're showing them or the discussion that you're having? That's really all they care about. The solution is almost secondary. It's more about what are they getting out of it. And then show the way that your solution alleviates pain and also achieves gain. And I know John Care's going to be talking about that at DemoFest X in New York City, is not just focus on pain. 80% of the time, pain drives what they're motivated by, but 20% of the time it's gain. So what pain can we alleviate? What gain can we help them achieve? Those are things that we can focus on as pre-sales. And then last but not least, use the driving reason for change or a critical date to help compel action. And I'll put in here in the chat. I can't type and talk at the same time, as many of you know who've been in my workshops. So I put in the chat other advice, but this last one is important because one of the things that we talk about in Great Demo is that besides a critical business issue and a value, we also want to know the compelling reason for change. It's in another methodology I do with salespeople as well, is what is the reason that they would want to change? Somebody could love it, they could even want it, but they might not have a reason to do it or to do it now. This is what can help us overcome do nothing, which is probably one of the biggest competitors that all of us are against, one of the biggest alternatives. So feel free to put in the chat anything else here that you would add in terms of advice for pre-sales or SEs, or advice that you give yourself. And again, advice that I remind myself about when I'm doing that role as well. And then in general for the sales team, and we've covered some of this already, but I'm just putting it on one slide for your convenience, collaborate together, and not just team as a nebulous overarching concept. Yes, sales management works with all the people that are on their team, and pre-sales management works with all the people on their team. What are we doing to get those teams to work together? But very, very specifically on an account and opportunity focus, what is being done for the pre-sales and the salesperson to work together specifically on that account or that opportunity. So again, focus on individual stakeholders. Who are the people that are going to be making the decision, and what's their role? Confirm with each other, what do you know? What do I know? What did you see? What do you see? What are we seeing together? I've been, and I'm sure a bunch of you have experienced this, I've been in meetings before where, sales was there and pre-sales was there, and we both heard the same thing, but when we came out of the meeting, we had different impressions. We had a different take on what was said. We may have heard things in a different way. So making sure that we know, what are we missing, and what are we doing together. And that brings us to planning the deliverables. Make sure that we know, and I know this sounds trivial, but it's so important. What is the purpose and the outcome of a meeting? I can't tell you how many times, at the last minute, there is a call and it's like, we need to do this. And I don't know too much about it, but they're going to be there and please show up. And we get there and maybe we even feel like we nailed the meeting, like the demo went great. They seemed happy, and yet we come out of the meeting and nothing happens. We're high-fiving each other because we think that the presentation was so great, but nothing happens as a result. What is the purpose and outcome of the meeting? Why are we there? What are we compelling them to do? What did we find out in discovery that they would like to do as a result of their investment of time and our investment? And then this is really, really important. And in all the workshops that I do, this is a really important part of it, is applying it to real stuff and then doing the dry runs. Grab each other. So pre-sales grab sales, sales grab pre-sales, managers grab, account owners or opportunity owners. Enablement, use this in your training. Dry run these scenarios, and especially the higher and more important the meeting is, the more of a dry run that should be done. It's amazing what you will learn when you say it out loud. And this is a phenomenal way to get each other on the same page. Yes, it takes time. And if you're in commercial, I understand you're going call to call to call. At least confirm at the beginning of the call, what's the purpose of this? And where you have time, spend a little bit of time practicing some of these things and working together. And then preparing a solid close. Once again, how many meetings end with, hey, thanks for your time. Hope you liked it. Let us know how we can help further. That's not a solid close. The close should be something to the effect of, did you see what you needed today? And oh, by the way, we should have confirmed that at the beginning. What did they need to see? Did you see what you needed? And then ask them, and get an answer, by the way. Then ask them, based on what you saw, did you like what you saw? Do you see using it? Does this look like it addresses your needs and provides the value? And get an answer from them. And then finally, all right, based on that, what are the steps for achieving your goal, your deadline, the idea that you have in mind for how to proceed? Now, we could talk separately about how much of that pre-sales does or how much of that sales does, and it's going to be a function of who's present at the meeting, but most importantly, discuss that in advance so that you know the way that you will be working together. That's the most important thing. And then, of course, discuss the decision process. So it isn't just about the solution and like what features and function we're showing, who's deciding and how are we dividing and conquering in terms of the business decision makers and the technical decision makers, the key stakeholders, the competitive landscape, all the rest of that goes with it is really, really important. Increase the perception of do nothing. So the idea is that it's not just about how great we are, but why the alternatives are not sufficient. And that includes the alternative of do nothing. So what are we doing as a team to help properly and in a constructive way help the client realize there's a brick wall they potentially can run into if they do nothing? So that should compel them to action. And then finally, what are we doing to influence the perception of your value? And yes, value is a perception, so is risk. So what can we do to make that happen? Once again, I'll put in the chat here if you can think of anything else. And finally, and then we're going to get into the wrap up and be able to answer some questions here. For management and enablement in general, consider pre-sales at par with sales. And again, I know some of you are doing that, and I know that the most successful teams are doing this already, but I think it's worth revisiting. Pre-sales is a sales role in the selling process. I frankly, personally, I know, and I grew up with it and I evolved with it. I started as an application engineer. That's how long I've been involved with this whole thing. In my sales career, I started as an application engineer. But pre-sales, I don't even like that term because it implies prior to the sale, but aren't we all prior to the sale actually? So if anything, maybe I'd like to offer that pre-sales means prerequisite for sales, that sales can't happen without a SE type role. And therefore it is just another sales role, just like BDR or CSM or, AE or AM or whatever. Let's look at each other as all part of the same team. And remember, everybody, pre-sales is a secret weapon. So we want to equip pre-sales, quote unquote, accordingly and utilize accordingly. cultivate this mentality or this mindset of the account and opportunity teaming, and the way that individuals work together when they are executing for an opportunity or for an account. And that includes a good, healthy dose of buying or selling process education, a unified focus on client success. So that means everybody laser focused on client success, because without that, we don't have anything. And then rewarding everybody equally. And I know this is going to be controversial, but incentives to work together. And we saw in the consensus survey, a lot of that is happening already. Many people, including over 50% of pre-sales functions, are being measured and rewarded based on annual recurring revenue. So that's important. Things like joint key key performance indicators, and even let me back up. Even things like having joint sales kickoffs and things like that. All right. And then if you have any other thoughts, you could put it in the chat about advice for management and enablement. So what we've looked at here today in our short time together is, what are the challenges that set us all up for opportunities, right? It's easy to finger point. We don't want to be finger pointing. We want to make sure that we are working through the challenges. Some of the impact on that, which is very dramatic, right down to how much we're paid, but more importantly, client success, because if the client is successful, we're all successful. What are some of the proposed solutions? And thank you all for putting things in the chat as we went through. And therefore, let's begin wrapping this up. And if you have any final questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we can get to those at the end here. So in conclusion, when we work better together as a team, we can help the buyer through the process. This is probably their first time buying. That's one of the big points in Garen's book. This is our nth time of trying to sell, right? So what can we do that instead of pushing and trying to show stuff and doing harbor tours, what can we do to help the client or the buyer pull and get interested? And as soon as they start to pull, we know we have them. How can we optimize our interactions with each other and with the buyer or with the client or with the stakeholders? And then all of this can help increase win rate, have better client satisfaction, drive more ARR. And therefore, when we move from trying to sell and instead focus on the buyer and make it easier for them to buy, we all benefit as a result. And what this really is all about is, it's about making seamless sales, which is the most likely title for the book, where I will go into this all in more detail. But my goal here today was to share some ideas, surface some of the challenges, help all of us, including me, with reminders about the way we can work together better and the way we can achieve better results for our clients and our customers. So here's my contact information. It will be in the handout. Feel free to connect with me in any of these ways. That URL or that QR code is for my website. Sammy will be providing you with some additional information about how to get the handout for today, but don't be shy, reach out, and I'd love to hear ideas. And also, I'm going to get as much input as I can for my book, because I've learned a lot from all you through my 25 plus years career in sales and sales management and enablement. And I know that there's a lot more to learn. So thank you all very, very much. Let's go ahead and let's do some Q&A. And then in the chat, I'm going to put key takeaways so you can share those with each other. So please put your
Okay,
takeaways in the chat as well. Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, Art. That was so awesome. Okay, I am going to share my screen really quick because I want to make sure we get you guys the QR codes that you need. And then we'll jump right into Q&A. So really quick, one plug, Art mentioned a couple times the sales engineering workload and compensation report. So the way that we make that report is from the survey that we put out at the end of the previous year, and we are currently taking survey responses for next year. And we could really use your guys' input. So you can scan the QR code. I'll also post the link in the chat for you guys. And if you guys could please give us your feedback. It only takes about 15 minutes and it's super helpful. Obviously, I know a lot of SEs like use this to actually get a raise or figure out all these different things about their role. So definitely scan that QR code if you are willing to participate. And then here is the link to the slides. So I'm going to leave this one up and I will put the link to the sales engineering workload and compensation survey in the chat. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, so I want to get to a couple questions we have in here. So Jamie asked, I love the numbers you're quoting. Numbers like 20% is about gain rather than pain. Do you have some notes and sources on those that you can share? She's been taking some, but she can't type as fast.
Well, yeah, so just intuitively, using Pareto analysis, right? It's the idea is 80% of the time it's one thing and 20% of the time it's something else. And I think we're all very, very familiar with the focus on pain, the being asked about solving pain. And sometimes all we do is focus on just that. The reminder is that there is a smaller but yet very important portion that is gain, which we also should ask about and probe for. So as far as actual proof points or statistics, I don't necessarily have those, but I know for a fact that it's usually pain that people ask about, but gain is also very, very powerful when it comes to discovery and moving the deal forward and getting your clients successful. So you can reach out to me separately and we can have a chat about that as well. And by the way, everybody, if you just can share 1 or 2 key takeaways in the chat, I think it's interesting to know that. And also you can steal some of those ideas from each other. So what did you get out of this session for today? What else, Sammy?
Well, this one isn't really a question. It's more of a statement. So it's just saying pre-sales are key resources, as you mentioned, but for some reason, sales tend to still have more power within organizations. So if you
Yeah,
have a question there, we can talk about that. But if there was a specific question, shoot us another message.
well, and I think that reiterates some of the things that we were talking about today is that we need to turn the mirror on ourselves and see if we're the ones that are perhaps perpetuating that. If you're a pre-sales person, what are you doing to show your value and to have a voice? What is your organization doing to elevate that and allow the voices to be equal, because everybody has a say in it, and pre-sales is trusted more by clients than sales. So there's a tremendous opportunity there missed if we aren't being recognized or seen as having as much impact.
Yep. Okay, well, we are just at the top of the hour. If you guys have any other questions, Art did put his QR code on a slide earlier. You can also just find him on LinkedIn. If you have any other questions, you can just message him directly. I'm going to do one more plug for that sales engineering workload and compensation survey. If you guys please have 15 minutes, the more responses we get, the more accurate the survey is for next year. So we just really appreciate you guys participating in that. I want to thank you, Art, so much for lending us your time and your expertise for this session. We are so excited to have you at DemoFest X New York City next month. So make sure you guys register for that event as well if you want to see another awesome session by Art. With that, I will give you guys back the rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sammy. Thanks, Consensus. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.